The aroma of ceremonial oils and pine resin permeated the air, blending with the distinct musk of werewolves in their human forms. I kept my back firmly against the rough-hewn timber of the great hall, attempting to fade into the background amidst the throng of boisterous bodies. Taking place annually under the autumn's fullest moon, the mating ceremony was the most significant gathering for our people. It was a celebration where unbonded wolves could find their mates, reinforcing bloodlines and forging new pacts between the clans. I should not have been present, not truly, not a person like me. My fingers found their way to the small silver amulet concealed beneath my simple tunic, the last thing my mother gave me before she passed. It was shaped like a crescent moon, etched with fine engravings that chronicled her human ancestry. "Always remember what you are," she had murmured, placing it around my neck so many years ago. Not wholly one or the other, but something unique and powerful. I had become adept at hiding it, just as I had learned to conceal so many other things about myself. The amulet felt cool against my skin, a constant reminder of the secret that flowed through my veins, half wolf, half human. I was a hybrid, a creature most pure-blooded werewolves would rather drive from their lands than permit inside their ceremonial hall. My wolf was subdued, my senses were not as keen, and my position in the pack hierarchy was non-existent. And yet I was here, serving as an attendant to Ronan, the son of our pack's beta, simply because no one else was available to assist him as he prepared for the evening when he might find his mate. "Stay in the shadows, Liam," Ronan had told me earlier as I helped him with his ceremonial leathers. "Keep your head down. Just be there if I call for you." He wasn't a cruel man, merely pragmatic. A half-wolf attending the mating ceremony was like bringing a hawk into an eyrie of eagles, an anomaly, a potential source of shame. I observed as the hall swelled with members from 6 different packs, their ranks clearly displayed by their seating. The alphas and their kin occupied a raised dais at the hall's far end, the betas and their families filled the front benches, and the warriors and huntmasters claimed the middle ground. Those of lesser standing, the healers, providers, and other wolves from less distinguished lines, found space wherever they could near the back. And where did someone like me fit in? Nowhere, and everywhere. I was a phantom moving through their world. The drums began to sound, a primal thrumming beat that resonated with something deep within me. Even my diluted blood answered its call. I felt the faint stirrings of the wolf inside, reaching for the sound like a sapling arching toward the sun. The ceremony was commencing. "Liam!" Ronan's sharp whisper sliced through the din. He was motioning urgently from several rows ahead. "I need ale, now." I gave a nod and slipped away, thankful for a task to perform. The ceremonial hall was an immense circular structure with tiers of wooden benches in a crescent facing the dais where the alphas were seated. Behind the seating, tables laden with food and drink lined the walls, ready for the feast that would follow the official rites. As I reached for a stone flagon to fill with ale, I sensed a change in the hall's atmosphere. The drumming grew more intense, and a hush descended upon the crowd. I turned to see the cause of the sudden silence, and nearly dropped the flagon. The northern pack had made their entrance. Unlike the other 5 packs that had already gathered, the northern pack seldom attended these inter-clan events. They inhabited the coldest, most unforgiving territories, and tales of their ferocity and power were legendary among the southern packs. Their alpha king was rumored to be the most formidable werewolf alive, a true apex predator who had slain his own father to claim his throne. His age and the full scope of his abilities were unknown. All that was known for certain was that he had never chosen a mate, despite being well into his prime, and now he stood at the entrance of the hall, flanked by his retinue. Even in his human guise, his dominance was unmistakable. He was tall and broad-shouldered, seeming to fill the entire doorway, and he scanned the room with eyes so pale they looked like silver in the torchlight. His dark hair was longer than was common in our southern packs, falling past his shoulders in a way that was both untamed and regal. But it was the scar that commanded everyone's attention, a jagged line that ran from his right temple down to his jaw, stark white against his weathered skin. It was a battle scar he wore like a diadem. The entire hall had fallen silent, and I became aware that I had been staring. I quickly filled the flagon and turned to go back to Ronan, but in my rush I took a wrong turn. Instead of heading for the middle rows where he waited, I found myself walking along the empty benches reserved for the most honored guests, benches that were about to be occupied by the northern pack. "Pardon me," I muttered, trying to retrace my steps, but it was too late. The northern alpha and his entourage were filing into the reserved section, and I was suddenly caught in their path, the flagon of ale still in my hand. I flattened myself against the wall, willing myself to become invisible as they passed. One by one, imposing figures clad in dark furs and leather strode past, their gazes sliding over me as if I were a mere fixture of the hall. I might have gone completely unnoticed if not for what happened next. The Alpha King stopped. Just as he was about to pass me, his stride faltered. His head turned slowly, his nostrils flaring almost imperceptibly as he drew in a breath. I knew what he was doing. He was scenting the air, scenting me. A wave of cold dread washed over me, my scent, my half-wolf, half-human scent that I worked so hard to conceal with herbal infusions and scented oils. Could he sense it? Would he denounce me? His silver eyes locked onto mine, and my breath hitched in my throat. For a timeless moment he scrutinized me with an intensity that made my legs feel weak. Then, to my utter disbelief, he moved, not away from me with the disgust I anticipated, but toward the empty space beside me. "Here," he said, his voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate through my very core. His beta, a grim-faced man with sharp features, leaned closer. "My king, these are not your designated seats. The alphas are seated at the—" I said here. The words were not loud, but they were laced with such absolute authority that the beta instantly fell silent. And so, with my heart pounding against my ribs, I found myself standing next to the most feared and powerful alpha in all the territories, as he claimed the bench directly beside where I stood, pressed against the wall. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the spot next to him. I looked desperately toward Ronan, who was staring at me from across the hall with wide, horrified eyes. The flagon in my hands shook, the ale threatening to slosh over the rim. I cannot," I whispered. "I am only an attendant. I must return to my—" "Sit," he repeated, and this time there was a quality in his voice that bypassed conscious thought, speaking directly to the wolf within me. My legs gave way before I could process what was happening, and I suddenly found myself seated beside the Alpha King of the northern pack, keenly aware of hundreds of shocked and bewildered eyes fixed upon us. The ceremonial drums stumbled for a beat before finding their rhythm again. A storm of whispers broke out across the hall. Even his own pack members were exchanging confused looks. "Your name," he said, his gaze fixed straight ahead as the ceremony attempted to recover from the disruption he had caused. "Liam," I replied, my voice barely a whisper over the frantic beating of my heart. "Liam," he repeated as if weighing the name on his tongue. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, he added, "You smell of ancient blood and hidden truths." The elder leading the ceremony had begun to speak, his voice rising over the drums to welcome the 6 packs and recount the sacred traditions. But my mind could not focus on anything except the heat emanating from the alpha beside me, and the terrifying realization that he had seen through my disguise. For the next hour I sat rigidly beside him, clutching the now warm flagon of ale that Ronan would never get, barely daring to breathe as the rituals unfolded. Eligible wolves were called forth by rank to present themselves to potential mates. Traditional dances were performed, and ancient vows were recited. And through it all the Alpha King sat beside me, his immense presence both intimidating and strangely compelling. I could feel the stares and hear the whispers. Who was this plain young man with the light hair, seated next to the northern alpha? Was he someone of importance? Was this a punishment? Was it some kind of political maneuver? When the first part of the ceremony ended and the attendees began to rise for the feast, I saw my chance to escape. "I must go," I whispered, finally setting down the flagon and preparing to stand. "My master requires my service." His hand shot out and closed around my wrist. His grip was surprisingly gentle, yet I could feel the immense strength it contained. "Your master." His silver eyes narrowed slightly. "I serve as an attendant to Ronan, son of Beta Alaric of the Southern Woods Pack," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. A slight smile touched his lips, but it held no warmth. "Not any longer." Before I could question his meaning, he rose, pulling me to my feet beside him. His towering height made me feel even more insignificant. With his hand still around my wrist, he turned to face the astonished expressions of his pack members. "This one," he announced, his voice carrying easily despite its low volume, "will attend me for the duration of our stay." His beta's face twisted in shock. "My king, we brought your usual attendants. There is no need to— Are you questioning my command, Gunner?" The temperature of his voice seemed to plummet. The beta named Gunner immediately lowered his gaze. "No, my king." The Alpha turned his silver eyes back to me, and there was a look in them that sent a shiver down my spine that was not entirely from fear. "You will attend me at the feast," he said, and though it was a clear order, there was a strange inflection in his voice, almost like curiosity. "And after." As he guided me toward the feasting tables, I caught sight of Ronan's face, pale with shock and something that looked disturbingly like anger. I had no idea what to do, how to explain, or what was even happening. All I knew for certain was that somehow, against all odds, the most powerful Alpha in the territories had chosen me, and I couldn't escape the feeling that he knew exactly what I was hiding. The great hall was alive with a palpable tension, hundreds of pairs of eyes following our progress as the Alpha King led me between the long tables. My legs felt unsteady, and I had to concentrate to keep pace with his determined stride. The hand on my wrist was both a brand and a lifeline, preventing my flight while searing me with unwelcome focus. "My king," a voice called, and the crowd made way for the elder who had conducted the ceremony. His weathered face was a mask of composure, but I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. "We have prepared the traditional seat of honor for you at the Alpha table." The Northern Alpha paused, his thumb brushing over the pulse point on my wrist in a gesture that sent an odd tremor through me. I wondered if he could feel my heart hammering beneath his touch. "I prefer to observe before I engage," he answered, his deep voice carrying through the now silent hall. "Prepare a separate table for us. For two." The elder's gaze shifted to me, then back to the Alpha, his confusion obvious. "As you command," he said with a small bow. In moments, attendants were setting up a small table on a slightly raised platform to the side of the hall. It provided a perfect view of the entire assembly while keeping us apart. Exactly the position a predator would choose, I thought with a growing sense of dread. As we approached the table, I finally found the courage to speak. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered, just loud enough for his superior hearing to detect. He didn't reply at first, instead guiding me to a chair held by an attendant. Only after we were both seated, with platters of roasted game and honeyed fruits set before us, did he lean slightly in my direction. "You ask bold questions for someone with secrets flowing through his veins," he murmured, reaching for a goblet of dark wine. A chill spread through my body. "I don't know what you mean," I lied, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. His lips twitched into the faintest smile. "Your heart beats faster when you lie. Another trait to add to your collection." He took a sip of wine, his unsettling silver eyes never leaving my face. "Eat. You will need your strength." "For what?" I asked, even as I cautiously took a piece of bread. "For surviving the night," he replied, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather rather than uttering what sounded very much like a threat. Across the hall, I saw Ronan seated with his family. His father, Beta Alaric, was in a hushed conversation with our pack Alpha, both of them casting frequent glances our way. Ronan himself was glaring at me, his handsome face contorted with a mix of bewilderment and resentment. I couldn't fault him. I had abandoned my duties to him, albeit against my will. "They are wondering if I have developed a sudden interest in claiming you as a mate," the Northern Alpha observed, following my gaze. "It would be a political nuisance. Your beta's son was hoping to forge an alliance with my pack through a union. I nearly choked on my bread. That's preposterous. I am merely an attendant." "Are you?" He tilted his head, studying me with an unnerving focus. "Tell me of your mother." The sudden shift in topic threw me. My hand instinctively went to the hidden amulet under my tunic. "She died when I was a child," I said carefully. "And your father?" "A warrior of my pack. He was killed in a border skirmish before I was born." This at least was not a lie. My father had been a wolf, though not the high-ranking warrior my mother had claimed he was, a convenient story to explain her pregnancy after she returned from a long journey alone. The Alpha seemed to ponder this, taking another slow drink of wine. "And yet you are here, with a scent unlike any wolf I have ever known." His voice dropped even lower. like moonlight filtered through human skin. My blood ran cold. There it was, the acknowledgement of what I had feared from the moment he stopped beside me. He knew. "Please," I whispered, unable to hide the desperation in my voice. "They would cast you out," he finished for me, setting down his goblet. "Or worse. The southern packs have always been traditional about blood purity." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away with fierce resolve. Showing weakness to a predator was a fatal mistake. "If you know what I am, why haven't you exposed me? Why this elaborate display?" For the first time, a flicker of genuine emotion crossed his scarred face, an expression I couldn't quite place. "Perhaps I find you interesting." Before I could reply, a disturbance near the entrance to the hall seized our attention. A group of warriors burst in, their clothing torn and spattered with blood. The hall fell silent as they stumbled toward the main alpha table. "An attack on the eastern border," one of them gasped, his voice loud enough for the enhanced hearing of everyone in the room to catch. "Rogues, at least 35. They have broken through the outer defenses." The feast descended into chaos. Warriors surged to their feet, alphas began shouting orders, and frightened murmurs rippled through the lower-ranked wolves. The northern alpha rose in a single fluid motion, his entire bearing transformed. The unsettling but composed man who had been sitting beside me was replaced by something far more perilous. "Gunner," he called, and his beta was at his side in an instant. "Assemble our warriors." Gunner nodded sharply, but then he hesitated, his gaze falling on me. "And the boy?" The alpha's hand settled on my shoulder, its weight both a comfort and a claim. "He remains with me." "My king, with all respect, a battlefield is no place for—" "I did not ask for your opinion, Gunnar." The beta immediately fell silent, bowing his head in submission before vanishing into the crowd to fulfill his orders. The alpha turned to me, and I was taken aback by the fierce intensity that had consumed his features. "Stay close," he commanded. "Do precisely as I tell you." "I should find Ronan," I protested, scanning the chaotic room for my master. His grip on my shoulder tightened. "Your loyalty is to the wrong person. Have they ever shown you such concern?" The question struck deeper than he could possibly know. No, they hadn't. I was tolerated, useful, but never truly one of them. Even Ronan, who was kinder than many, saw me as little more than a convenient servant. Still, I hesitated. "I am not a warrior. I will only be a liability." A strange look crossed his face. "There are many forms of strength, little crescent moon." The nickname, an obvious reference to my dual nature, sent an odd shiver through me. "Now come." He led me through the panicked crowd with stunning efficiency, his mere presence causing wolves to move aside. Outside, the night air was sharp with the chill of autumn, and the full moon hung bright and heavy above us, partially veiled by scudding clouds. Warriors from all 6 packs were mustering in the clearing, forming units with impressive speed, despite having been feasting only moments before. I saw Ronan being led to one of the fortified lodges with the other high-ranking youths, and felt a pang of something akin to envy. At least he had a clear place in all this. The Northern Alpha guided me not toward the safety of the lodges, but toward a group of his own warriors who stood apart from the rest. They were easy to spot, taller, broader, and radiating an aura of barely restrained savagery that made even the other pack's warriors keep their distance. "My king," one of them acknowledged, then his brow furrowed at the sight of me. "The male should be with the others." "He stays," the Alpha replied, in a tone that allowed no argument. He turned to me. "Can you ride?" I blinked in surprise. "Yes, but—" Before I could finish, he let out a sharp whistle. From the shadows of the nearby stables, a massive black destrier appeared, trotting directly to him without a bridle or saddle. The horse was immense, its eyes seeming to glow red in the moonlight. Not an ordinary steed, I realized, but one of the rare shadow mounts bred exclusively for alpha wolves. "This is Nyx," he said, stroking the horse's powerful neck. "He will carry us both." "Both? You cannot intend to take me into battle." His silver eyes glinted. "Not into the battle, but I will not leave you here." "Why?" I demanded, frustration finally eclipsing my fear. "Why do you care what becomes of me? I am nothing to you, nothing to anyone here." A dangerous light flickered in his expression. "You are mistaken on both points," he said quietly. Then, before I could react, he lifted me effortlessly and set me on the horse's back. A moment later, he swung up behind me, his chest a solid wall against my back, his arms encircling me as he grasped the horse's mane. The intimate proximity made me stiffen, unaccustomed to such close contact with anyone, let alone a male and an alpha at that. "Relax," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "I can feel your fear, but I am not your enemy." "Then what am I in danger from?" I asked, hating the quaver in my voice. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he called to his warriors. "We ride for the eastern ridge. The rogues will have used the mountain pass. We will intercept them before they reach these grounds." With a squeeze of his powerful thighs, he urged the destrier forward, and we were suddenly hurtling through the forest, the Alpha's warriors close behind. The cold night air stung my face, and I found myself instinctively leaning back into the solid warmth of the Alpha's chest. The forest became a blur as the shadow mount moved with supernatural speed, navigating the dark paths with ease. Behind us I could hear the thundering of other hooves and the occasional howl as some warriors shifted into their wolf forms to run alongside. "Why would rogues attack during a mating ceremony?" I shouted over the wind. "It's sacred ground." His arms tightened almost imperceptibly around me. "That is precisely why. All 6 packs are gathered, their attention on rituals, not defense. It is an opportunity they could not resist." "But what is their goal?" I felt, rather than saw his grim smile. "Power, territory, mates, the usual ambitions that drive men to conflict." He paused before adding, "But this attack feels different, too well organized." We broke free from the trees onto a ridge that commanded a view of a narrow mountain pass. The Alpha brought Nyx to a halt with the slightest pressure of his hands. Below us, in the pale moonlight, I could see a disturbing sight. Dozens of figures moving through the pass, some as wolves, others in human form carrying crude weapons. "There," he murmured, his lips close to my ear. "Do you see how they move? In formation. Rogues do not typically possess that kind of discipline." He was right. Even with my inferior half-wolf sight, I could tell these were not the usual chaotic bands of outcasts that sometimes harassed packlands. They moved with a clear purpose, like trained soldiers. The Alpha issued quiet orders to his men, who spread out along the ridge with silent speed. Then, still holding me securely in front of him, he guided Nyx down a steep path that led to a small cave set into the mountainside. "You will wait here," he said, dismounting and then lifting me down. The casual demonstration of his strength, handling me as if I weighed nothing, was another stark reminder of the vast power difference between us. Alone? I couldn't keep the apprehension out of my voice. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Nyx will guard you. He is worth a dozen warriors." He ran a hand along the great horse's neck, murmuring something in a language I did not know. The destrier nickered softly and took up a position at the cave entrance. The Alpha turned back to me, and in the moonlight filtering into the cave, his silver eyes seemed to glow. "Stay here, remain silent. I will return for you when it is safe." "What if you don't?" The question escaped me before I could stop it. Something flashed across his face, surprise perhaps that I would show concern for his safety. Then his lips curved into a smile that transformed his harsh features, making him look younger, almost boyish, despite the fearsome scar. "I am not so easily slain, little crescent moon." He reached out, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought he would touch my face. Instead, his fingers found the silver chain around my neck, drawing the hidden amulet out from under my tunic. He studied the crescent moon shape with its delicate engravings, an unreadable look in his eyes. "This was your mother's," he stated. It was not a question. I nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in my throat. His thumb brushed over the engravings. "Keep it close. Remember who you are." Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he said, "There is power in being both, rather than merely one or the other." Before I could react to this cryptic remark, he released the amulet and stepped back, his expression reverting to the impassive mask of the Alpha King. "I will return. Trust no one else who approaches." With that final warning, he was gone, melting into the darkness beyond the cave with the silence of a predator. Nyx shifted his stance, effectively blocking most of the entrance, his massive body providing both a shield and warmth against the night's chill. I sank down against the cave wall, pulling my knees to my chest. The evening's events churned in my mind like a maelstrom. How had I gone from being an invisible attendant to hiding in a cave under the protection of the Northern Alpha King? And more importantly, what did he want from me? He knew my secret, that much was certain. Yet instead of exposing me, he had claimed me as his attendant, isolated me from my pack, and now secreted me away during an attack. None of it made sense, unless... A terrifying thought struck me. What if he required something that only a half-wolf could provide? There were old dark legends of blood magic that called for mixed blood. Was that why he had chosen me? Was I intended to be some kind of sacrifice? The howls of wolves in combat echoed faintly from the pass below, and Nyx's ears twitched back and forth, tracking every sound. I clutched my mother's amulet, drawing comfort from its familiar feel. "Remember who you are," she had told me. "Not wholly one or the other, but something unique and powerful." The Alpha's words had mirrored her sentiment. "There is power in being both, rather than merely one or the other. But what kind of power, and what would it cost me?" Time stretched on, agonizingly slow in the confines of the cave. I strained my ears for sounds of the battle, but they had faded into distant echoes, leaving me with only my racing thoughts and the steady, reassuring presence of Nyx standing guard. The massive Shadow Mount remained utterly still and vigilant, his ears constantly swiveling to track sounds beyond my perception. I found myself tracing the etchings on my mother's amulet, recalling how she would sit with me at night, telling stories of her human village where people lived without the rigid constraints of pack hierarchy and wolf politics. "They possess their own kind of strength," she would say, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "Humans build, create, imagine. They do not need fangs or claws to reshape the world." As a child, I had been deeply ashamed of my human half. It made me weaker, slower, less than the pure-blooded wolf children who sensed my difference and ostracized me from their play. But my mother had always insisted it was a gift. "You see the world with two sets of eyes," she would tell me cryptically. "One day that vision will be important." A sudden change in Nyx's posture jolted me from my reverie. The great horse's ears were pricked forward, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Someone was approaching. I shrank deeper into the cave's shadows, my heart pounding. The Alpha had warned me to trust no one else who came. What if it was rogues? Or worse, someone from my own pack who would recognize what I was? Nyx relaxed slightly, which I took as a positive sign. A moment later, a familiar, imposing silhouette filled the entrance to the cave. The Northern Alpha ducked inside, his presence instantly dominating the small space. Even in the dim light, I could see dark stains on his clothing that I knew were blood. "Are you injured?" I asked before I could check myself. He seemed almost surprised by my question. "No, the blood is not mine." His silver eyes assessed me carefully. "You are unharmed?" I nodded, getting to my feet. "I heard fighting. Is it over?" "For now." His expression grew grim. "It was a diversion. The main force attacked the ceremonial grounds from the west while we engaged this group." Fear seized my heart. "The others? Ronan?" "The ceremonial grounds were successfully defended," he interjected, "but there were casualties, and several mates were taken." "Taken?" The word was barely a whisper. The Alpha's jaw clenched. "Rogues sometimes steal mates, especially during the ceremonies. It is an ancient, barbaric tradition." "We have to help them," I said, moving toward the cave entrance. An unexpected wave of protectiveness washed over me. I may not have been fully accepted by the pack, but I had grown up with these wolves. The thought of any of them in the hands of rogues was intolerable. The Alpha caught my arm. "You are not going anywhere near rogue territory, but I did not protect you only to lead you into greater peril," he said, his voice absolute. I stared up at him, confusion and frustration churning within me. "Why are you protecting me at all? You still have not explained why you chose me, why you are keeping my secret. What do you want from me?" He was silent for a long moment, studying my face with those penetrating silver eyes. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry a deep weariness, he released my arm. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing toward the mouth of the cave. Nyx stepped aside to let us pass, and the Alpha led me up a narrow path that wound along the ridge. Away from the direction of the battle, the full moon bathed the forested landscape below in silver and shadow. In the distance, I could see smoke rising from what I presumed were the ceremonial grounds. 20 years ago, the Alpha began, his deep voice strangely quiet in the night. A northern female left our territory without leave. She was not of high rank, but she was gifted. She could foresee events before they occurred, small things for the most part, where the best hunting would be, when the weather would shift, which pairings would produce the strongest pups. My steps faltered. He continued walking, compelling me to keep up. She was gone for nearly a year, he went on. When she returned, she was changed, subdued. Her gift had altered as well, stronger in some ways, diminished in others. The pack elders questioned her at length about her time away. What did she tell them? I asked, though a cold certainty was already forming in my chest. His eyes met mine. That she had lived among humans, that she had fallen in love with one, that she had borne a child whom she left with the human, knowing the northern pack would never accept a half-blood. My breath caught in my throat. You believe I am that child? I know you are. There was no doubt in his voice. Your scent, it carries echoes of the northern lands, of pine forests and snow-dusted mountains, and beneath that. He leaned closer, inhaling deeply near my neck, making me shiver. The unmistakable scent of Elara's bloodline. Elara, a name I had never heard, yet it resonated within me like a distant bell. My mother told me her name was Eleanor, I whispered. A human name she chose during her time away, he confirmed. But she was born Elara of the Silver Lake line, a distant cousin to the northern royal family. I stopped walking, my mind reeling. If what you say is true, why did she end up with the Southern Woods pack? Why did she claim my father was a warrior who had died? The Alpha's expression hardened. Because she was fleeing from me. A cold fear trickled down my spine at his words. From you? Why? Not for the reasons you imagine, he said, reading my expression with ease. I was not king then. My father was, and he was, fixated on Elara's gift. When she returned changed, he became convinced that her child, you, would possess unique powers that could be used to strengthen our pack. He wanted to find you, to take you from your human father. And my mother fled to protect me, I finished, the pieces of my past falling into a terrible new configuration. He nodded. She sought refuge with the southern pack, creating a new identity, and claiming her mate had been one of their own. They accepted her, but they never fully trusted her. And when she died, they kept me on as an attendant, I said bitterly. Useful, but never truly one of the pack. Something like anger flashed across the Alpha's scarred face. They knew what you were. They must have. No pure-blood wolf would carry your scent. Only the previous Alpha and my mother's closest friend knew the full truth, I said, shaking my head. When they died, the secret mostly died with them. The current leaders might have their suspicions, but as long as I am useful and unobtrusive, they overlook what is right in front of them. He finished, disgust clear in his tone. We reached the crest of the ridge, where the view opened up to reveal the vast territories of all 6 packs spread out below. In the center, smoke still rose from parts of the ceremonial grounds, but I could see wolves moving about, rebuilding and tending to their wounded. You still have not answered my question, I said softly. What do you want from me? The Alpha was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon where his northern lands lay. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its usual hardness. When my father died and I became king, I swore an oath to find Elara's child. Not to use you as he would have, but to offer you your birthright, a place among your mother's people. He turned to me, his silver eyes gleaming in the moonlight. I have searched for years, sending scouts to all the neighboring packs. Tonight, by sheer chance, I found you. Birthright, I repeated, the word alien on my tongue. I have no birthright. I am half human. And half northern wolf, he countered. With northern blood comes northern strength, even if it is diluted. I laughed without humor. I am the weakest wolf in the southern pack. I can barely shift, and when I do, my wolf form is unimpressive. Because you have been taught to be ashamed of what you are, he said, stepping closer. Because no one has shown you how to unite both halves of yourself. His proximity was unsettling, his scent of pine and winter air and something distinctly male enveloped me. I forced myself to hold my ground, though every instinct screamed at me to retreat from this predator. "And you could teach me?" I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. "Yes." The simple confidence in that single word was astounding. Before I could respond, a howl rose from the direction of the ceremonial grounds, a signal. The Alpha's head turned sharply toward the sound. "They are convening a council of pack leaders," he explained, "to discuss the attack and the stolen mates. You should go," I said, suddenly drained by the revelations, the fear, and the weight of a history I hadn't known was mine. He studied me for a moment. "Come with me," I blinked in surprise. "To a council of Alphas? I'm just a—" "If you say just an attendant one more time, I may reconsider my vow not to harm you," he interrupted, though I thought I saw a flicker of humor in his eyes. "You are Alara's son, of the Silver Lake line. You have as much right to be there as any beta. The other packs will not see it that way," I warned. "And if they discover what I am, you will be under my protection," he said firmly. "No one will dare to challenge that." The absolute certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver through me, a reminder of his immense power, of how dangerous he could be if provoked. "Why would you risk political fallout for someone you just met?" I asked. "Someone who isn't even a pure blood wolf." For a moment something raw and honest crossed his face, so quickly I almost missed it. "Because I know what it feels like to be judged for what you are, rather than who you are." His hand moved unconsciously to the scar on his face. "Because Ilara was kind to me when others were afraid, and because I made her a promise." "What promise?" I asked softly. "That if I ever found her child, I would offer protection, not exploitation." His eyes held mine. "I keep my promises, Liam." The way he said my name, with a kind of quiet gravity, made something stir in my chest. I pushed the feeling away, focusing on the practicalities of his offer. "If I go with you to this council, what happens afterward? You return to the north, and I go back to being Ronan's attendant?" His expression darkened. "Is that what you want?" The question took me by surprise. What did I want? I had never really been asked that before. My life had been about survival, about being useful enough to be kept, and invisible enough to avoid scrutiny. "I want—" I began, then stopped, unsure. "Yes?" he prompted. "I want to understand who I am," I finally said. "What I am. My mother died before I could learn everything I needed to from her. I have been hiding for so long, I am not sure I know how to be anything else." Something softened in his silver eyes. "Then perhaps it is time you stopped hiding." A second howl rose from the ceremonial grounds, more insistent than the first. "We should go," he said, offering me his hand. "Nix will get us back faster." I hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. Accepting it felt like a symbolic act, like stepping over a threshold from which there was no return. "I don't even know your name," I realized suddenly. Everyone simply called him King, or Alpha. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Kalen," he said. "My name is Kalen." Kalen. The name suited him, strong, ancient, like embers after a fire. I took a deep breath and placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, and he led me back to where Nix waited. The ride back to the ceremonial grounds was both quicker and more comfortable than our earlier journey. Perhaps I was growing used to Kalen's presence behind me, or perhaps it was because I now understood some of his interest in me. Either way, I found myself leaning against his chest without the previous tension, letting his warmth seep into me as Nix carried us swiftly through the forest. As we neared the ceremonial grounds, the extent of the attack became clear. Several structures had been burned, and wolves in both human and wolf form moved through the wreckage, carrying the wounded and beginning repairs. Kalen guided Nix toward the main hall, which had largely survived the assault. Outside, a group of stern-faced men stood in a tight circle, the alphas of the six-packs, along with their most senior betas. As we dismounted, I saw Ronan standing with a group of youths near the entrance. His eyes widened when he saw me, and he immediately broke away, striding in our direction. "Liam," he called, relief in his voice. "You're alive. When the rogues attacked, I thought—" He stopped short, his gaze shifting to Kalen, who stood protectively close behind me. His expression changed from relief to something more guarded. My Alpha is looking for you, he said to Kalen, respectfully lowering his eyes. I am aware, Kalen replied coolly. Liam will be attending the council with me. Ronan's eyes snapped to mine, his shock palpable. But he's just... A valued member of my retinue, Kalen interjected, his tone leaving no room for argument. Confusion washed over Ronan's face, but he was too well versed in pack etiquette to challenge an Alpha directly. Instead he turned to me. Liam, what is going on? Why is he treating you like... He trailed off, unable to find the words. I opened my mouth, unsure what I was going to say, when Kalen's hand settled lightly on the small of my back. The council is waiting, he reminded me, his voice gentler than I had ever heard it. I'll explain later, I promised Ronan, though I had no idea how I would begin to explain any of this. His eyes narrowed slightly. My father will not be pleased. Your father's pleasure is not my concern, Kalen said dismissively, guiding me away. As we walked toward the group of Alphas, I whispered, You're making enemies for me. You already had enemies, he replied quietly. They simply did not consider you important enough to acknowledge before. Before I could process this unsettling thought, we reached the circle of pack leaders. All conversation ceased as they noted our approach, their eyes fixing first on Kalen, then shifting with clear confusion to me. The Southern Woods Alpha, my Alpha, technically, stepped forward. Alpha Lorcan was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his once dark hair now streaked with gray. His expression was a carefully neutral mask, but I saw the question in his eyes as he looked at me. King Kalen, he greeted formally. We were about to begin. Then it is fortunate we have arrived, Kalen replied smoothly. Alpha Lorcan's gaze lingered on me. Perhaps your attendant would be more comfortable waiting inside with the other youths. Kalen's hand pressed more firmly against my back. Liam will stay. A ripple of murmurs passed through the assembled leaders. I caught fragments of whispered questions. Who is he? Why would he bring an attendant? Look how he stands beside him. Alpha Lorcan's jaw tightened, but he gave a stiff nod. As you wish. He turned to address the full group. The rogues have taken 8 mates, 2 from my pack, 3 from the Eastern Valley, 1 from the River Pack, and 2 from the Mountain Ridge Pack. None from the Northern Territories, observed one of the other Alphas, his voice thick with suspicion. The Northern Pack arrived last and was positioned farthest from the main attack, Alpha Lorcan pointed out, though I could hear the same suspicion in his reasonable tone. Are you implying my pack had a hand in this? Kalen asked. His voice was deceptively soft, but the temperature of the gathering seemed to drop several degrees. I felt the subtle shift in his stance, a predator coiling to strike if needed. No one is implying anything, Alpha Lorcan said quickly. We are simply trying to understand what happened and how we should respond. Kalen nodded, but his posture remained coiled and alert. Continue. We have tracked the rogues' scent to the Dark Hollow, Alpha Lorcan said. They have made a camp there, well defended and difficult to approach undetected. We should strike at once, declared one of the other Alphas, a younger man with fierce eyes, whom I recognized as the Mountain Ridge leader, before they can move deeper into the unclaimed lands. A direct assault would put the captives at risk, countered the River Pack Alpha, an older female with silver-streaked auburn hair. We need a more subtle approach. As the leaders debated, my attention was drawn to a map spread on a nearby table. It depicted the territories of all 6 packs, with the unclaimed lands, including the Dark Hollow, shaded in a darker ink. Something about the rogue's position bothered me. Without thinking, I stepped forward to examine the map more closely. The conversation stopped abruptly as all eyes turned to me. What is he doing? Someone muttered. I felt Kalen move to my side, his presence both a comfort and a threat. You have noticed something, he said. It was a statement, not a question. I nodded, suddenly nervous under the intense scrutiny of so many powerful wolves. The Dark Hollow, it borders all 6 territories. If the rogues are setting up a base there, they could launch attacks against any of us. The boy makes a valid point, Alpha Lorcan conceded, though he carefully avoided looking at me directly. But why take mates? Rogues typically raid for food and supplies. Rogues do not typically operate with the kind of coordination we saw tonight either, Kalen pointed out. His hand came to rest lightly on my shoulder, a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the other leaders. "What are you thinking?" he asked me directly. I swallowed hard, summoning my courage. What if they are not rogues at all? What if they are trying to form a new pack? A heavy silence fell over the group. Alpha Lorcan's eyes narrowed as he studied me with a new interest. "A new pack," the river pack Alpha repeated slowly. "That has not happened in generations." "It would explain why they took mates," I continued, emboldened by Kalen's supportive presence, "and why their attack was so well organized. They are not just surviving, they are building." "If this is true, it is worse than random rogue attacks," said the Eastern Valley Alpha, a lean man with sharp features. "A new pack on our borders would threaten us all." "But who would lead such an effort?" Alpha Lorcan asked. "Forging a pack requires an Alpha of immense strength. Draven," Kalen said suddenly, his voice carrying a weight of history that made everyone turn to him. "It could be Draven." The name clearly resonated with the assembled leaders. I saw recognition and alarm flash across their faces. "Draven is dead," the Mountain Ridge Alpha said firmly. "Your father executed him 15 years ago for treason." "A body was never found," Kalen countered. "And the attack tonight bears the hallmarks of his strategies, the diversion, the precise timing, targeting mates of breeding age." Alpha Lorcan's expression darkened. "If Draven lives and is building a pack, we have a grave problem." "Who is Draven?" I whispered to Kalen, the tension around me becoming almost unbearable. "My father's former beta," he replied quietly. "Before he tried to seize the Northern Throne, he was innovative in his cruelty." A chill ran through me at his words. The thought of such a man holding 8 mates captive was horrifying. "We need to confirm if it is truly him," the River Pack Alpha said, "before we commit to any course of action." "And how do you propose we do that?" the Mountain Ridge Alpha demanded. "Send a delegation to inquire politely?" "We need someone who can get close without arousing suspicion," Alpha Lorcan mused. "Someone who could potentially infiltrate their camp." "I could go," I heard myself say, the words escaping before I could stop them. Every head turned in my direction, their expressions a mixture of shock, outrage, and confusion. "Absolutely not," Kalen said at once, his hand tightening on my shoulder. I turned to face him, a sudden resolve flooding through me. "Think about it. The rogues, or whoever they are, will not see me as a threat. I am not an obvious wolf. I could approach them as a human traveler lost in the woods." "It is too dangerous," he insisted, his silver eyes flashing with something that looked almost like fear. "It is actually not a terrible idea," Alpha Lorcan said slowly, appraising me with calculating eyes. "Liam has always been different, less wolf in his demeanor. He could potentially pass for human." I felt Kalen stiffen beside me. "You knew," he said to Alpha Lorcan, his voice dangerously low. "You have always known what he is." Alpha Lorcan did not flinch under Kalen's glare. "We suspected. His mother was vague about certain details, but Liam has served the pack loyally, and we have protected him in return." "Protected?" Kalen's laugh was cold. "You have used him, kept him ignorant of his heritage, treated him as less than what he is." "This is not the time for this argument," the River Pack Alpha interrupted firmly. "We have 8 wolves to rescue. If Liam is willing to help, he is not," Kalen stated flatly. I straightened my spine, something new and defiant rising within me. "I am." Kalen turned to me, genuine surprise on his face. "Liam." "All my life I have been tolerated because I am useful," I said quietly, meeting his gaze. "Let me be useful now, in a way that only I can." "This is not about proving your worth," he argued, lowering his voice so only I could hear. "Isn't it?" I countered. "You told me to stop hiding, to embrace both sides of what I am. My human side could save those mates." An internal conflict played out across his scarred face. "I promised to protect you." "Then help me do this safely," I challenged, "but do not stop me from trying." For a long moment he simply stared at me, something shifting in those silver eyes. Then, to my surprise, his lips curved into a reluctant smile. "You have your mother's stubbornness." He turned back to the waiting alphas. "Liam will attempt to gather intelligence," he announced, his authoritative tone making it clear this was not a negotiation. "But not alone. I will have warriors positioned within howling distance, and he goes nowhere near that camp until we have a detailed plan with multiple contingencies." Alpha Lorcan nodded, looking both relieved and surprised. "Agreed. We should begin preparations immediately." As the leaders broke into smaller groups to discuss strategy, Kalen guided me slightly apart. "Are you certain about this?" he asked, searching my face. "You can still change your mind." I shook my head. "I have spent my entire life hiding what I am. Perhaps it is time I used it instead." Something that might have been pride flickered in his expression. "Your mother would say the same." "Tell me about her," I said impulsively. "Ilara, what was she like in the north?" His expression softened with memory. Quiet, but strong. "She had a way of seeing through people, not just foreseeing events, but understanding their hearts. When my father became obsessed with her gift, treating her more as a tool than a pack member, she never lost her dignity, or her kindness." "Kindness toward you?" I guessed. His hand moved unconsciously to his scar. "I was not always as controlled as I am now. As a young wolf, my strength outpaced my restraint. I hurt people. Not intentionally, but the harm was done. The pack feared me. My father saw only a weapon to be sharpened. But Ilara—" "She saw you," I finished quietly. He nodded. "She taught me that power without compassion is merely brutality, that strength can protect as well as destroy." The vulnerability in his admission touched something deep inside me. This feared Alpha King, revealing a gentler past, a deeper motivation than mere politics or power. "Is that why you are helping me? To honor her memory?" His silver eyes held mine. "That is how it began," he acknowledged. "But now I find myself wanting to help you for your own sake," he admitted. "There is something in you, Liam, a strength that has nothing to do with wolf or human blood, a strength of spirit that reminds me what true leadership should be." Heat rushed to my cheeks at his words. Before I could form a reply, Alpha Lorcan approached us. "We have the beginnings of a plan," he said, his gaze moving between Kalen and me with barely concealed curiosity. "Liam will approach the camp tomorrow, posing as a human herbalist who has become lost in the forest. We chose this cover because it gives him a reason to carry certain items that could be useful, including a wolfsbane salve that could temporarily mask his partial wolf scent if needed." "And what signal will he use if he identifies Draven or locates the captives?" Kalen asked, his focus immediately on the practicalities. "A small mirror to flash sunlight toward our scout's position," Alpha Lorcan replied. "Simple but effective." Kalen frowned. "And if he is caught? If they discover what he is?" Alpha Lorcan's expression grew grim. "Then he signals with this instead." He held up a small pouch. "Crushed rowan berries. When burned, they produce a purple smoke visible for miles. It will be our signal to attack immediately. Full force." I took the pouch with slightly trembling fingers. The reality of what I was volunteering to do suddenly felt very concrete. "We will position warriors here, here, and here," Alpha Lorcan continued, indicating points on the map. "Close enough to respond quickly, far enough to avoid detection." Kalen studied the map with narrowed eyes. "My warriors will be stationed closer, and I will be with them." Alpha Lorcan looked as if he might object, but something in Kalen's expression made him reconsider. "Very well, we move at dawn." As he walked away, Kalen turned to me. "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll test every part of you, wolf and human." I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the night's events. Where should I go? I do not think I would be welcome in Ronan's quarters any more. "You will stay in my camp," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, "where I can ensure your safety." The proprietary nature of his statement should have bothered me. Instead, I felt an unexpected sense of belonging, something I had rarely experienced in my life. As he guided me toward where the northern pack had made their temporary camp, apart from the others, I was acutely aware of the stares that followed us. Word had clearly spread about the strange half-wolf boy who had somehow captured the northern alpha's attention. "They will talk," I murmured. "Let them," he replied, unconcerned. "What others think is far less important than what we know to be true." "And what is true?" I asked, suddenly needing to hear him say it. He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. In the moonlight, with the ceremonial grounds behind him and his silver eyes fixed on mine, he looked like a figure from an ancient legend. "That you are not defined by what you lack, but by what you are," he said, each word deliberate and clear. "That being both wolf and human gives you a perspective that neither could possess alone, and that tomorrow that unique perspective may save lives." The simple confidence in his voice reached something long buried inside me, a yearning for acceptance that I had denied for years. "And after tomorrow?" I dared to ask. His expression softened. "After tomorrow, Liam, you will have choices. Real choices." For the first time, perhaps, I did not ask what he meant. Something told me I already knew. Dawn broke with a pale, misty light filtering through the trees. I stood at the edge of the Northern Pack's camp, dressed in the simple human clothing one of the warriors had provided, loose trousers and a tunic that would allow for free movement if needed, my hair tied back in a practical knot. A small satchel hung at my hip, containing various herbs, the signal mirror, and the pouch of rowan berries. My mother's amulet was around my neck, now worn openly instead of hidden. When Kalen had seen me instinctively tuck it under my collar, he had gently pulled it back out. "Do not hide it," he'd said quietly. "It is part of who you are." Now, as I prepared to depart, the Northern Pack gathered to see me off. They had accepted Kalen's interest in me with a surprising lack of fuss, treating me with a cautious respect that felt alien after a lifetime of being overlooked. Kalen approached, his expression grave. He had spent most of the night in strategy sessions with the other alphas, yet he still looked powerful and alert. He held a small knife in a leather sheath. "For emergencies only," he said, handing it to me. "It is silver-edged, effective against our kind if necessary." I took it carefully, noting the elegant etchings on the hilt, the same crescent moon motif as my amulet. "This is northern craftsmanship." "It belonged to Elara," he confirmed. "I brought it with me, hoping I might one day return it to her child." The weight of the knife suddenly felt immense, another piece of a heritage I had never known. I secured it inside my boot, hidden but accessible. "Remember," Kalen continued, his voice low enough for only me to hear, "your human side is not a weakness in this. It is your strength. You can think and move in ways they will not anticipate from a wolf. Trust those instincts." I nodded, fighting down the fear that threatened to overwhelm my resolve. "If it is truly Drovan, what should I look for to confirm, besides the obvious brutality?" His jaw tightened. "Draven has distinctive eyes, one blue, one amber, and a tattooed band around his right wrist, a wolf bite encircling it like a bracelet." I committed the details to memory, then asked the question that had been haunting me since the previous night. "What if I cannot do this? What if my wolf is too weak, or my human side too obvious?" Kalen's expression softened, and to my shock, he reached out and touched my cheek, a gentle fleeting contact that sent warmth spiraling through me. "Liam," he said, my name sounding like something precious in his voice, "you have survived for years in a pack that never truly accepted you. You have maintained your strength and dignity in circumstances that would have broken many purebloods. Do not underestimate yourself." His confidence in me was like a physical force, straightening my spine and lifting my chin. "I will not fail," I promised, as much to myself as to him. His silver eyes held mine. "Just return safely. That is all that matters." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This powerful alpha, feared throughout the territories, was looking at me with genuine concern and possibly deeper emotions I dared not name. "I will," I whispered. Alpha Lorcan approached, interrupting the moment. "It is time," he said, his gaze darting between Kalen and me with poorly concealed curiosity. "Our scouts report minimal activity in the camp. Most will likely be resting after last night's raid." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I am ready." "Remember," Alpha Lorcan continued, "you are a human herbalist who became lost while gathering plants. You have been wandering for 2 days and are desperate for aid. If they ask where you came from, say you traveled from the eastern human settlement beyond the mountains." "And if they detect a hint of wolf in my scent?" I asked. "Use the wolfsbane salve," he instructed, "but only if absolutely necessary. It will burn the skin and will only mask your scent for an hour at most." I patted the small container in my satchel, hoping I would not need the caustic substance. With final nods to both alphas, I turned and started down the forest path that would lead to the dark hollow. I could feel Kalen's eyes on me until I was swallowed by the trees. The journey took nearly 2 hours, following a carefully prescribed route to approach the rogue camp from the east, the direction a lost human would most likely appear from. As I walked, I consciously altered my posture and gait, adopting the slightly less fluid movements of a human. I let my senses soften, allowing my eyes to miss details a wolf would notice, and made my footsteps a little heavier than natural. By the time I caught the first sense of the camp, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, and the distinct musk of wolves, I had fully inhabited my role as a frightened, exhausted human man. I deliberately stepped on a dry twig, creating a loud snap, then called out in a trembling voice, "Hello, is anyone there? Please, I need help." Almost immediately, I sensed movement in the undergrowth. 2 men emerged from between the trees, their posture and expressions instantly marking them as wolves despite their human forms. Both were large and unkempt, with the wary eyes of predators. "Well, now, what do we have here?" the taller one said, circling me slowly. "A little human, all alone in the big, bad woods." I made myself tremble, widening my eyes in what I hoped was convincing fear. "Thank goodness, I have been lost for days. I am an herbalist from the eastern settlement. I was gathering plants and lost my way in the forest." The shorter man leaned in, sniffing near my neck. I flinched away, an action that was not entirely feigned. His proximity made my skin crawl. "He smells interesting," he muttered to his companion. My heart rate spiked. Had they already sensed my partial wolf scent? I clutched my satchel nervously, ready to grab the wolfsbane salve if needed. "Please," I begged, injecting desperation into my voice. "I just need food, water, and directions back to the road. I have medicines I can trade." I gestured to my satchel. The taller man grinned, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for a human mouth. "Oh, we'll take you to our camp, little herbalist. Our alpha will be very interested to meet you." They flanked me, not quite touching, but close enough to prevent any escape, and led me deeper into the dark hollow. As we walked, I carefully memorized our surroundings, mapping the path in my mind. I counted at least 3 sentry posts we passed, committing their locations to memory. The camp itself was larger than I had anticipated, with dozens of crude shelters arranged around a central clearing where a large fire pit smoldered. Warriors moved about purposefully, carrying weapons and supplies. This was no disorganized band of rogues. This was indeed a pack in the making. My escorts led me to a larger shelter made of animal hides and fallen logs. "Wait here," the taller one commanded, ducking inside. While he was gone, I scanned the camp as subtly as I could, searching for any sign of the captured mates. Near the far edge of the clearing, I saw a heavily guarded structure. The guards' positions, facing both outward and inward, suggested they were keeping people in as much as keeping others out. The tall wolf re-emerged from the shelter. "He will see you now." Taking a steadying breath, I stepped inside. The interior was dim, lit only by a small fire. As my eyes adjusted, I saw a figure seated on a crude throne of interwoven branches. "A human herbalist, lost in my territory," a smooth, cultured voice observed. "How convenient." As he leaned forward into the firelight, I fought to maintain my frightened human facade. The man was handsome in a cruel way, with sharp features and a predatory smile. But it was his eyes that confirmed his identity, one blue, one amber, regarding me with calculating interest. Draven, Alpha Lorcan and Kalen had been right. "Please, sir," I began, forcing my voice to quaver. "I just need—" "I know what you need," he interrupted, rising from his throne. He was tall and lean, with the coiled energy of a snake about to strike. "The question is, what do I need from you?" He circled me slowly, just as his warrior had, but his assessment felt more penetrating, more dangerous. "An herbalist could be useful," he mused, stopping in front of me. "We have injured warriors and other guests who might require attention." "Guests?" I asked cautiously. His mismatched eyes glinted with amusement. 8 lovely mates who will soon help me build the strongest pack these territories have ever seen once they accept their new reality." Disgust and anger flared within me, but I carefully concealed both emotions. I am not sure how I could help with wolves. I only treat humans. "You would be surprised how similar we can be," Draven replied, his gaze lingering on my face. "There is something about you familiar somehow." My heart stuttered. Had he recognized some echo of Elara in me? I quickly looked down, feigning intimidation. "I am nobody of importance, sir. Just a simple herbalist." He lifted my chin with one finger, forcing me to meet his gaze. "We shall see about that." The contact took every ounce of my willpower not to pull away. His touch felt wrong, invasive and cold, where Kalen's had been respectful and warm. "In the meantime," he continued, "you will examine our guests. It would be inconvenient if they were to die before fulfilling their purpose." This was the opportunity I needed, though the thought of what the captives might have already suffered made my stomach clench. "I will need my medicines," I said, gesturing to my satchel. Draven nodded to one of his warriors. "Search it." I stood perfectly still as rough hands rummaged through my herbs and supplies. The mirror and rowan berry pouch remained in a secret compartment I had sewn into the lining, a precaution Alpha Lorcan had insisted upon. "Nothing dangerous," the warrior reported. "Take him to the mates," Draven instructed. "Watch him closely." 2 guards escorted me across the camp to the structure I had noticed. Inside, huddled on pallets of straw, were 8 wolves in varying states of distress. Some had visible injuries, bruises and cuts, while others simply stared with hollow, traumatized eyes. "You have 1 hour," a guard growled, shoving me inside and taking up a position by the entrance. I moved immediately to the nearest wolf, a young male with dark hair and a swollen wrist that suggested a painful sprain. As I knelt beside him, I whispered, "I am from the 6 packs. Help is coming." His eyes widened, then quickly returned to their vacant stare, smart enough not to give me away. As I pretended to examine his wrist, I murmured, "When I leave, be ready. Tonight, at the rise of the moon." One by one I moved among the captives, offering what genuine medical aid I could while passing my message in hushed tones. None of them betrayed me with so much as a flicker of an eye. When the guard finally returned to escort me out, I had confirmed that all 8 were alive and able to move, though 2 would need assistance. Outside, I was brought before Draven once again. "Well?" he demanded. "They need better food and clean water," I reported, choosing my words with care. 2 have injuries that will require ongoing treatment. I would like your permission to prepare some poultices for them." Draven studied me, his mismatched eyes narrowed. "You seem very concerned about wolves for a human." "I am concerned for all living things," I replied, thinking quickly. "It is why I became a healer." He smiled, a cold expression that held no warmth. "Admirable. You may prepare your medicines, but you will not be returning to your settlement. Your skills are too valuable to my new pack." Fear gripped my heart, but I forced a grateful nod. "Thank you for your protection." He waved a dismissive hand. "Take him to gather whatever plants he needs. Keep him within sight of the camp." A young female warrior stepped forward to escort me. As we walked to the edge of the clearing, I carefully observed the camp's defenses, counting warriors and noting weapon caches. I needed just a few moments alone to use my mirror and signal Kalen. "I need barkseed," I told my escort. "It grows on the north side of the trees, and feverbane, the small yellow flowers over there." I pointed to a spot just beyond the edge of the clearing. The female warrior hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Be quick." As I knelt to gather the plants, I positioned myself with my back to her and the camp. With movements disguised as searching through the undergrowth, I slipped the mirror from my satchel and angled it toward the ridge, where I knew Kalen's warriors would be watching. 3 quick flashes, the signal to confirm Draven's presence. 2 long flashes, captives located, alive. 1 circular motion, attack at moonrise. I had just slipped the mirror back into my satchel when a rough hand clamped down on my shoulder, spinning me around. Draven stood there, his mismatched eyes blazing with fury. "Did you truly think we would not have sentries in the trees?" he hissed, his fingers digging painfully into my flesh. "I knew there was something wrong with you." He leaned in, inhaling deeply near my neck, then recoiled with a snarl. "Wolf," he spat, "but not quite. A half-breed abomination." Terror coursed through me, but alongside it, a surprising surge of defiance. I was done hiding, done being ashamed of what I was. "Better a half-breed than a traitor," I retorted, meeting his gaze without flinching. Rage contorted his face. "You will regret those words when I am finished with you." As he dragged me back toward the camp, I managed to reach into my satchel, my hand closing around the pouch of rowan berries. I had failed in my deception, but I could still signal the attack. With one desperate motion, I flung the pouch directly into the central fire pit as we passed. Purple smoke erupted instantly, billowing upward in a signal that would be visible for miles. Draven's roar of fury was drowned out by a more powerful sound, the combined howl of dozens of wolves converging on the camp from all directions. The last thing I saw before Draven's fist sent me spiraling into darkness was a flash of silver eyes and midnight fur as Kalin, in his massive wolf form, crashed through the tree line, leading the charge. Nan 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 nan.